there are already so many players heading overseas to play during the off-season.
Does she have the build to play in the WNBA?
The WNBA loses it all when Caitlin Clark leaves because, in all honesty, she owed the organization no allegiance at all, not after the way they treated her. Rather than accept responsibility for their monumental failure, Clark did what any rational person would do and departed. The WNBA is inconsolable and in disarray, acting as though they are stunned. But guess what? It's too late. Clark will not be returning to his league, no matter how much they beg for forgiveness or attempt to retract their actions.
She's just not built for the physicality of this league.
Yeah,
and she's not quick enough to get away from the physicality.
But now that the WNBA has lost its biggest star and is freaking out, it's because of a combination of sheer stupidity and negligence that she packed her bags and took her talents to Europe. The league, which sorely needed her charm and talent, couldn't even bother to protect her from being brutalized on the court. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot.
People are tuning in. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I have not tuned in 1 second since Caitlin Clark was eliminated, but that's not unusual.
The WNBA has lost its biggest star, and let's be honest, they're freaking out. Caitlin Clark has been the league's saving grace, the player who can draw in viewers and make people actually want to tune in. However, due to a combination of sheer stupidity and blatant negligence, she's packed her bags and taken her talents to Europe.
But yes, she will have a target on her back.
Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. The league, which sorely needed her talent and charm, couldn't even try to shield her from being abused on the court. The league did nothing except observe and stare at Caitlin Clark, who was being pursued on the court like she had a huge target on her jersey. Despite being a rookie and a new talent, they allowed her to receive 177% more flagrant fouls than any other player.
There was also a stat that came out a few weeks ago that said Caitlin Clark received 17% of the WNBA's flagrant fouls this season, and 80% of those flagrant fouls were committed by the Chicago Sky against Caitlin Clark. Now, this one that we see right here that I believe should have been a flagrant foul was not called that. So there have been cheap shots, there have been hard fouls, there have been other plays that haven't even been called flagrant fouls.
It is reasonable to assume that statistics by themselves would alert officials to the fact that they were seriously mishandling the situation, but instead, they continued to act as though nothing was wrong, which is why Clark expressed her frustration. To put it mildly, what she experienced was a planned beating.
Get called for some technical fouls. She struggled with physical defense she's faced at the professional level and voiced frustration with the league's officiating, recently telling reporters, quote, "I feel like I'm getting hammered and everybody is physical with me, and opponents get away with things that other people don't get away with." That's what Caitlin Clark said.
And let's not forget the eye jab. Yes, someone gave her a hard enough blow to the eye that she became temporarily blind. She had to stumble off the court, probably wondering if she was playing street fight or basketball, and the referees did nothing. Not even a whistle or a call. If it had been LeBron or Curry, this would have been a major scandal, but it's the WNBA, so they should just brush it under the rug and hope no one notices.
And I understand the frustration. I do. You saw Caitlin Clark's frustration, and you were so used to watching Clark thrive and
Then there was the elbow to her ribs because apparently playing defense means making cheap shots. At this point, it was obvious that opponents would stop at nothing to bring her down, and the WNBA didn't think twice about protecting their best player. They allowed this nonsense to continue game after game because, apparently, watching Caitlin Clark get mugged was their idea of a good time. Losing Caitlin Clark was the league's biggest mistake of the century because, well, she brought the league out of the shadows and into the spotlight, drawing an estimated 1.5 million viewers each time.
Weekend doubleheader ever, with 2 games combined and an average 1.5 million viewers. That marks a 143% increase from a WNBA doubleheader on ABC a year ago. Did you know that? Did you know that? Did you know that?
WNBA protect her greatest asset by turning a blind eye while she got mauled like it was some cheap backyard game. And what did the WNBA do? They basically handed her over to the bullies on the court from day one. She was the best thing to happen to them. However, instead of protecting her, they let her get pummeled, poked, and prodded as if she was some crash test dummy way to go.
All of the trials and tribulations, all of the debates that we've had at this desk right here, at the end of the day, she stuck through with it.
Just look at the numbers before Clark entered the game. They were lucky to muster 500,000 viewers for the finals. However, once she entered the game, the ratings took off, and even after her elimination in the playoffs, they managed to maintain a 500,000 viewership. This is evidence of the Caitlin Clark effect. However, rather than seizing this fantastic opportunity, they chose to watch as players targeted her on the court, acting as though it was their personal goal to eliminate her. With 17,000 fans at her season finale, Clark packed arenas like a rock star. As a result, ticket sales for a single game increased by 16% in 2023 alone, while forecasts for 2024 skyrocketed by 93%.
Okay, now let's not talk viewership, let's talk ticket sales. Bear with me. Ticket sales grew in 2023 by 16% from 2022. Ticket sales have grown by 93% in 2024. What that means is without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA would have taken till 2029 or 2030 to get to where Caitlin Clark has gotten them today.
She was essentially carrying the entire league's success on her shoulders. So what did they do? They allowed a few envious players to sap her enthusiasm. It seems like the league didn't realize that hurting Clark would negatively impact their own revenue, as they allowed $5 million in ticket sales to leave the building without giving it a second thought. And it wasn't just tickets that went out. Her jersey became the best-selling item in WNBA history, giving the other supposedly famous players the impression that they were giving them away for free.
Look at the Caitlin Clark story. Just in the merchandise sold, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
But even as she broke records for merchandise sales, the league's geniuses stood by and let opponents make her life on the court a living hell. Meanwhile, sponsors realized Caitlin Clark was the sport's future and flocked to her faster than you could say moneymaker. The WNBA, on the other hand, stood by and watched in disbelief as she was repeatedly tripped, smacked, and ejected from games.
WNBA viewership, okay? Game. 7,300 in attendance, okay? The average Angel Reese game is 10,100, 10,200. They come to watch her. You know what the average attendance is when Caitlin Clark plays home or the road?
What?
15,300.
Even with the numbers glaring in their faces, they still permitted a group of would-be enforcers to go after her. This wasn't defense. This was personal, and the WNBA allowed it to happen because they're too inept to protect their own stars. She appeared in 22 of the 26 games that topped the million-viewer mark, meaning she was directly responsible for almost every game that broke the 1 million viewer barrier.
And when she gets it, she has elite skills that are going to really help her.
Yeah,
But she needs to be on a better. She needs to be on a better team.
And when she does, she will be able to use her elite skills to her full advantage, but she needs to be on a stronger squad. In addition to increasing viewership, Caitlin Clark was inspiring a new generation of girls and setting an example for them. Just as children used to look up to Michael Jordan in the past, little girls were looking up to Clark, copying her style, and hoping to be on the court one day. The WNBA had the opportunity to make Clark the league's face, but instead they allowed her to be brutalized out of jealousy and pettiness.
Merchandise up 450%. And now she's out of the playoffs. What a gift for the WNBA and for ESPN for that matter. But now what happens? I'm really intrigued because there's a league with players that feel like they should be getting the attention. Now they have center stage, but the ratings are going to go down. How far, though?
The WNBA is left wondering what the hell happened. Sure, they might have managed to hang on to decent ratings for a little while longer, but without her, the league is in serious trouble. They lost more than just a player. They lost the player who is turning women's basketball into a popular sport, and now she's leaving for Europe, where at least she won't have to worry about being ambushed every time she steps onto the court.
People are tuning in. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I have not tuned in 1 second since Caitlin Clark was eliminated, but that's not unusual for me.
For me, they failed not just Clark, but women's basketball as a whole. It's not just a loss for the league. It's a message to all the young girls who looked up to her. Don't expect to be treated fairly even if you're the best. Good luck trying to rebuild now, WNBA. You had the brightest star in the sky, and you let her get bullied right out the door. What kind of league does that? A dysfunctional one. Instead of creating a brand around one of the brightest stars in women's basketball, you let her get treated like a punching bag, and the bullies. Oh, They had a field day. These players acted as though fouling Clark was some sort of badge of honor. They didn't just foul her. They enjoyed it, knowing the league would turn a blind eye. These so-called professionals went about smiling after every filthy act, knowing full well that the WNBA was too cowardly to do anything about it. There were no penalties, no bans, nothing.
$76,000 is not enough for someone you are looking to be the face of the league going forward.
This is a WNBA issue, not just Caitlin Clark's. The league should have developed Clark's talent, built the league around her, and made her the face of women's basketball, but instead they allowed her to be bullied out the door. This sends a message that talent and skill are meaningless if the league is unwilling to intervene and defend its stars. She earned a 4-year contract worth slightly more than $300,000 as a rookie, but the WNBA failed terribly in its sole responsibility of fostering a safe and competitive environment. This league will be affected by Caitlin Clark's departure for a very long time. What does the WNBA's brightest star have to flee to another continent in order to be treated like a human being? It seems like the league needs to do some serious introspection. As for the players who fouled her repeatedly and got away with it, well done on your hollow victory. You didn't just kick a player out. You exposed the WNBA for the farce that it is.
She signed a 4-year, just over $300,000 rookie salary.